Yo, it's Austin, and I want to see some dang sequels. Enough with the yearly Call of Duties and Dynasty Warriors. There's too many fantastic games out there that are, probably never gonna see a sequel, so I want to count down my top 10 for you.
You ever finish a game and think to yourself, man, it would be really cool if this got a sequel. I'd love to see what happens next. Then suddenly, 20 years pass, you're sitting alone in the dark at 4 a.m., unable to sleep, works in 3 hours, and you need to shave your necky in the morning? Well, that's me every day with so many games. If I didn't limit this to just 10, we'd be here for an entire year, and no one wants that. Except me, maybe, but that's probably because I'm the only one who would love to see a proper ending to Advent Rising, but whatever. I'm gonna miss a lot of stuff you're probably thinking of. Games that mean a lot to you are franchises begging for a sequel. As much as I'd like to see a proper Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 or a new pod racing game, there's more I'd rather see a follow-up to. So please, don't get mad. Please?
Alrighty, here we go. Welcome to the top 10 video games that need a sequel but are probably never gonna get one, but I really want it really badly, and I'm just gonna keep waiting.
What in the world happened to Spyro the Dragon? Well, I kind of know, as do most of you. After the initial Spyro PS1 trilogy consisting of Year of the Dragon, Ripto's Rage, and the original, developer Insomniac sold that shit off, on to make the Ratchet & Clank franchise, which is still going on to this day. So, what happened? Long story short, the rights are all over the damn place. Spyro didn't belong to Insomniac, but actually Universal, then Activision. Insomniac wasn't making enough money, so they created their own franchise to pay the bills. Activision then took Spyro and tried to make it without Insomniac and couldn't quite get it right. From a platformer to a weird combat-based RPG-ish hybrid thing, the Legend of Spyro games missed the mark critically, and at least in my opinion, I didn't like it. Elijah Wood, David Spade, and Gary Oldman tried to save the day, but the games were never the same again. And neither was Elijah Wood.
Terrific.
The original Spyro trilogy really was something special. For the time, the technology used in the animation was pretty ahead of the game, even if it was creepy. The music was composed by one of my favorite drummers of all time, Stuart Copeland. The Police, son! Each level and world felt super unique, and even if the game itself wasn't terribly difficult, they were all surprisingly cozy games to play. Charging forward to headbutt things, burning enemies alive, floating around, and platforming perfection. It's hard to hate on anything here. These days, Spyro just seems to be in Skylanders? The original Skylanders game was called Skylanders: Spyro's Adventure, but that was dropped from the title and now he's just a character in it. How far the mighty have fallen. At this point, I don't really think it's possible for a true old-school Spyro sequel, which sucks. Our little purple dragon boy is deeply entrenched in them Skylanders games. But you know what? The upcoming Crash Insane trilogy remake gives me hope that maybe we can get another chance. It might not be Insomniac, but maybe it'll be decent. Just get Stuart Copeland to come back and redo his music, or he might be a little mad.
Where's that jugular?
I've said it before, I'll say it again. We need more Bomberman. Konami, what are you doing? Until recently, I'd completely given up hope that we'd ever see another Bomberman game at all, but then I was greatly surprised to see Super Bomberman R come out on the Switch. The shit is super adorable and has such a great style, but it's not the Bomberman game I want. Well then what do you want, you might ask?
These. I want more of this. This one specifically.
While I've always enjoyed the classic-styled, grid-based Bomberman action, there's something about the adventure-styled single-player games that gripped me by the hand and yoinked me out of the window to some crazy Neverland. One might say that Bomberman is my own personal Peter Pan, and I'm totally fine with being windy. Bomberman 64, Bomberman 64 The Second Attack, Bomberman Generations, and to an extent Bomberman Jetters. But mostly The Second Attack. Man, that game was so rad! I had hope for a new adventure Bomberman game with that briefly announced Bomberman 3DS game. What they showed gave me major N64 vibes and whoo, I was pumped. But this is Konami we're talking about here, so I guess that was the end of it. Of the many dead Konami franchises, Bomberman's lack of stage presence has to be one of the saddest for me. You can see a little bit of hope in Super Bomberman R's single-player boss stages, but in the end, it was just another Bomberman game lacking things that even previous titles had. Come on, Konami baby, show the White Bomber some love. Keep the new style too, it's too good.
of the more tragic tales in video game history in this era specifically has to be the tale of Mistwalker. You know, the people responsible for this. Lost fucking Odyssey. Or as it's known in some circles, Final Fantasy 13.
Where'd you guys go? How did you create the best Xbox 360 RPG, let alone the best RPG of last generation, before falling into being a mobile game developer? Okay, let's recount the whole saga. Mistwalker is a Japanese developer founded seemingly out of frustration with the direction Square Enix was headed. Final Fantasy XII had a ton of turmoil in development. Many people left, including Final Fantasy series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. The Gooch! He even dragged over Nobuo Uematsu, one of the best composers in the scene. Mistwalker was quite literally a goddamned supergroup, but for some reason they made Blue Dragon. While I'm not particularly fond of games running at 15 frames per second, Blue Dragon at least looked gorgeous for the time. Okay, fine, I'd call it a miss. Game's slow as hell and it's just okay. But, the next thing they made was Lost Odyssey, and what the hecky? Admittedly, it doesn't take a lot to grip me emotionally into a video game, but reading the 1,000 Year stories, seeing these characters who are immortal face their problems, learning more about Kaim, Seth, and everyone, it's just so good. With a battle system reminding me of Legend of Dragoon and writing so strong, it's hard for me to not want to see something else in this vein. But where'd you guys go? After making a couple of portable Blue Dragon games and other things here and there, we got The Last Story, which was, at least to me, just okay. It took Operation Rainfall for the West to finally get it, but I think the Wii's limitations and the run into enemies to attack combat system didn't quite grip me. By no means bad, it just wasn't Lost Odyssey. But ever since The Last Story, Mistwalker has only made mobile games, and that is a damn shame to hear. The Xbox 360 exclusive Cryon was canceled without a word, and now we're stuck waiting. However, there's rumblings about Mistwalker teaming up with Silicon Studio to make a game. You know, the people behind the Bravely Default games. I gotta say though, if this ends up with Mistwalker developing something for Square Enix, I'm gonna cry. Like, straight up ironic tears. Let's go. Someone give Mistwalker another chance, and soon. I need to feel again. You know what would be rad? Another Star Wars Bounty Hunter game. I feel like Bounty Hunter barely scratched the surface of what was possible with this concept. After all, everyone wants to play as the galaxy's coolest bounty hunter, Boba Fett. Or Jango. I don't know why, maybe it's because he's got a cool helmet. He doesn't really do much and kind of just dies in Return of the Jedi, but like, you know, yeah! Bounty hunting was a concept kind of touched on in games like Mercenaries, Crackdown, and to an extent, that was pretty much what Shadow of Mordor's Nemesis system was. Taking down the target, dead or alive. But having it set in the Star Wars world brought so much to it. Jetpacking around, wrapping dudes up, and aiming two guns separately made me feel, well, pretty badass, even if it hasn't aged very well. Star Wars 1313 looked like it was gonna be a rad successor to this. Too bad it's currently in development hell, or as they said, something we're spending a lot of time looking at. You know what that means. But you know, I was downloading the PS4 version of Bounty Hunter to play, and I got a little impatient and booted up the Disney Afternoon Collection and started playing Darkwing Duck. Man, that's a good-ass game. I think it might have been my favorite of all the duck cartoon shows back in the day. The NES game holds up pretty well too. It's like a Mega Man clone of sorts. It's even made by Capcom, so yeah, that totally makes sense. They remade DuckTales recently, yeah? Why not Darkwing? Give me more of that daring duck of mystery. Sure, we got a new comic book, but let's get a new show. What are Drake Mallard and Gosling up to these days? Man, that was a good show. The Actraiser franchise is one of those short-lived SNES ones that pumped out a super iconic game only to be completely lost to time and killed off due to a less than stellar sequel, which really sucks because the original was so damn ahead of its time. Adding together city-building god games with action platforming sounds like it would be a dumb mess, but hey, Enix and Quintet's Actraiser nailed it. A kick-ass soundtrack by Yuzo Koshiro always helps. My boy! It's too bad the follow-up, Actraiser 2, quickly put a nail in that coffin. Like, sure, yeah, let's get rid of the whole city building and customization thing, everything that made Actraiser special, and instead just make a generic platformer. I've already talked pretty extensively about Actraiser, so if you want to see my extended thoughts, check out that video after this. I may or may not cosplay as God in it.
Those of y'all who have watched my top 10 Sega Genesis games videos should have seen this one coming. Like honestly, without a shadow of doubt in anyone's mind, Streets of Rage needs a sequel? Like a new one? Come on!
When I heard the news recently of Sega planning on reviving major IPs, my mind immediately went to two games, Phantasy Star and Streets of Rage. But since you know PSO2 exists and is still not over here, I have no choice but to scream about Streets of Rage. Let my voice be heard
deep into the ether.
Frankly, beat-em-ups in 2017 are an extremely niche genre that is still reeling from the extreme oversaturation that it had for like 2 decades. Most arcade games, so many SNES and Genesis games, and even to this day, indies sure love beat-em-ups. But something about Streets always spoke to me. The weird 90s take on the future, this neo-cyberpunky looking world that wasn't afraid to get a little supernatural and always over the top. While Streets 1 and 3 are special in their own right, Streets of Rage 2 to this day remains one of my favorites of ever. It's probably because 2 was developed by Ancient, spearheaded by the once again ever lovely, ever talented, ever next level Yuzo Koshiro. Listen, you're not gonna get me to stop talking about this boy. The Streets 2 OST kills it, and all I wanna see is a 2010s take on this world and sound again. You know, with modern beat-em-up improvements and hell, some innovation. Show us what you got, Sega. While there's been many fan games and homages throughout the years, there's one in development that stood out to me. It's called The Takeover, and it's on Steam in early access. Yes, early access, but I've been supporting the game for a good bit now, and there's frequent updates that really continue to make the experience so much more fun. While it may not be Streets of Rage or hell, even Final Fight, it's pretty damn close. And more importantly, you have guns, and that's pretty fun. The potential is there, and until I get another Streets game, I'ma jam this. There are few video games that I can go back to at literally any point and feel a sense of wonder and fun as if I just started playing it. A few that come to mind are games like Super Mario World, Sonic 2, and Power Shovel. And well, this is about a Sonic game, but not the one you're thinking of. Sonic Racing! No, not Sonic R, you doof! And not the one with Banjo-Kazooie, the other one. Transformed, aka the best kart racing game that has ever existed, bar fucking none! Okay, Mario Kart 8's pretty good, but dude, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed is no joke, an absolutely fantastic kart racing game. The second you boot this up and see the vehicles transform into boats and planes, you might think, oh, this is some Diddy Kong Racing wannabe. But no. You're fucking wrong. Dynamic levels that radically change from lap to lap, alternate routes depending on which vehicle you play as, little to no rubber banding, and most importantly, ludicrous speeds. Making drifting a thing you can snake around turns without losing brought so much strategy to utilizing it. Items that were relatively balanced and a boost system that relied on skill as opposed to luck. Transformed is for the kart racing fan that doesn't want to rely on blue shells, but instead themselves. On top of that, it features all kinds of Sega characters, and I love Sega characters.
Oh, and Wreck-It Ralph and Danica Patrick, my favorite Sonic OC.
Never minding that, I want another. I already wrote an awful love song to this game, and I think we need to raise our voices. The crew at Sumo Digital are some of the most talented folk out in the modern gaming industry, responsible for gems like Snake Pass and the Forza Horizon games. So yeah, come on. Bring us another Sonic racing game. Sonic and even more All-Stars Racing double transformed. Or hell, transformed on the Switch. I'll take anything. But most importantly, I love you. Okay, cool.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Nostalgia Train. I'm your host Austin Eruption and we're going to continue talking about dead franchises associated with Sega. Today we're going to start with Rocket Knight that's Konami.
I have literally talked about the lovely Opossum Knight Sparkster to death on this channel. I think this makes 4 times now? It's gross! The reason it's on here isn't just because I love it though. It's here because they tried to reboot it. They really did. It was even a passion project for the people who picked it up. Back in the 2000s indie digital download explosion, more and more developers were taking risks. So, Konami decided to release a reboot of Rocket Knight Adventure simply titled Rocket Knight. Unfortunately, I think something got lost in the adaptation. Namely, the charm and speed. Rocket Knight Adventures and even Sparkster on the Genesis were good at conveying that you were a little original Speedy Gonzales rodent killing machine, and the reboot in comparison feels like he's working out a few kinks in his jetpack. And while story-wise that makes sense, as a game it feels strange. The high-intensity pumping collaborative soundtracks were replaced with kind of generic-sounding orchestral arrangements. It's not a bad game by any means, it just, well, when stacked against the titan it was birthed from, ultimately falls flat. While I would love to see a true follow-up to one of my childhood's greatest gaming memories, I don't see it as likely considering the state of Konami's IPs and the ultimate critical and public dismissal of Rocket Knight. It's a damn shame too, because nothing's quite filled the void in my heart for a need of high-speed, boss-filled, chaotic gameplay with a side of adorable.
Rocket Knight Adventures is amazing, and if you want to hear me talk about it some more, check out my video that's like 3 years old now. Really?
JRPGs. There are so many JRPGs I could put on this list. I mean, we already got another Mistwalker game, but for the sake of you guys not having to hear me gush about how good the PS1, PS2 era was and how much games like Enchanted Arms suck, I've decided to narrow it down to just one. It wasn't easy, trust me. Not when you have games like The Legend of Dragoon, Skies of Arcadia, or franchises like Wild Arms, Lunar, and Lufia. The list never ends.
So here we go, the JRPG franchise that I think deserves one more shot, Grandia. I only have a physical copy of 2, but that's okay because it's the best one.
Allow me to tell you a little story. Once upon a time, when I was 10 years old, I was subscribed to the official Dreamcast magazine. My age is important in the story, so pay attention. Issue number 10 showed up at my door and boom, RPG blowout. Crazy looking anime man on the cover, Grandia 2 and Skies of Arcadia. Now, I had recently finished Final Fantasy VI for the first time not too long before this, and I loved it. JRPGs were my shit back in the day. I'd gotten the Dreamcast for Christmas the year beforehand, and I was rearing to go, as RPGs were pretty dry near the launch. So here I am, staring at this magazine, the Battle of the RPGs, Ryudo vs. Vise. Huge, in-depth, multi-paged reviews on each game. Grandia with a 9 and Skies of Arcadia with a perfect 10. Holy shit, I needed them, but I didn't have any damn money. I was 10. So I did what any sensible child would do. I begged my parents. But they said I could only get one, so I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, that makes sense. So we went to a Walmart in the middle of fuck all North Dakota. I had decided on Skies of Arcadia because, hey, the perfect score in the magazine don't lie. But they only had Grandia 2, so I decided, yes, I shall play this. Little did I know I was about to get my ass blasted out with one of the darkest RPGs ever made! At 10 years old. I could go on and on about how good Grandia 2 is, and I will at some point. But at this point in time, Grandia 2 became my favorite game. It just was. Maybe it's because Ryudo was voiced by Leonardo, and I simultaneously was a fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But hey, kids are kids, and they can like the Ninja Turtles and complex plots of distancing yourself from religion only to fight with the powers that may be. That was weird.
We must seek Master Splinter's help. It's work, not a barrel of laughs.
Pumped for a damned follow-up, I went back and played the original Grandia, and to my pleasure, I saw that, hey, this is pretty alright. It was absolutely lighter in tone, but it told a lovely love story and had an amazing sense of adventure. Years later, I saw Grandia Extreme come out on the PS2. It was pretty underwhelming, as it was just a dungeon crawler with less emphasis on plot. The nail in the coffin was Grandia 3, which took my dark and heavy game about people learning to accept others and turned it into, like, some proto-moe shit. It's not awful, it's just not what I wanted. Unfortunately, after Grandia 2, the lead designer Takeshi Miyagi left Game Arts to form his own company, and in 2011, sadly passed away. So it's highly unlikely we'll ever get another game of the same caliber. All we can do is praise what he's made and celebrate the fact that more recently, Gung Ho released an anniversary HD version of 2. Seriously, play Grandia 2 if you can. It's one of the most brilliant JRPGs ever released with its complex and gripping combat system, a story that can still make me feel as an old man, and a soundtrack so beautiful I use it in like most of my videos, seriously. I can dream for a proper Grandia 4, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up.
Now don't get me wrong, Skies of Arcadia is a really good game, but Grandia's just got that special place, even though I kind of named the channel after this because, well, Grandcadia didn't really sound as good. So yeah.
Hey, remember a few minutes ago when I said, I've decided to narrow it down to just one?
Yeah, I lied. Sorry. I'm just a sucker for JRPGs in general. However, the number one slot has to be one of my favorite games of all time, and it unfortunately seems to have bitten the dust in the last 10 years or so. Why yes, I am talking about the legendary JRPG franchise of Suikoden.
I've never been super vocal about this on my channel or anything, but Suikoden 2 might be my favorite game of all time. Yeah, sure, the translation is a little wonky here and there, but that was just a sign of the times. The character and political-driven story, the easy-to-use 6-member party system, the amount of options given to the player were all great. Choices you had to make could be heavy and actually affect the outcome of things. But hey, I'm getting ahead of myself. Ginso Suikoden, as it's known in Japan, is a game set very loosely off of a Chinese novel called Shu Hu Xuan. Mostly in that each game features the 108 Stars of Destiny, or rather, 108 characters you can play as or recruit to your party. 108, you say? Yes, 108! And that's each game. Like, some character artists gotta be pretty damn busy. But somehow, and I don't know how they pulled this off, but a ton of these characters are alluring. Like, obviously, not everyone is getting Persona levels of development, but there's still so much to a plethora of the cast that you can't help but pick favorites. Now, they aren't all winners. My main focus here is Suikoden 1 through 3. This trilogy truly was something else. The first was easily a pilot to what was in store, but was a solid RPG with a very interesting cast. Letting the main plot be heavy on politics was a smart decision, and because of that, it feels very atypical from what people expect from a normal JRPG. Dinner, dinner, dinner. 2 is a fucking masterpiece in every sense of the word. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Suikoden 2 was one of the first games that allowed you to import save data from a previous game. That means based on your decisions and how well you played the original, you can import characters and specific events directly into 2. This was so rad and unexpected. Suikoden as a whole takes on 3 different types of combat schemes. You've got your traditional RPG combat as well as tactical grid-based strategy RPG battles. In these battles, certain characters will actually die for good if they are beaten, kinda like Fire Emblem, so you want to do your best to make sure you don't lose anyone. This in turn can affect how a lot of scenes play out and even elements of the ending. The third style of combat plays out in 1-to-1 duels. Usually reserved for key moments in the game, they play out very similarly to rock, paper, scissors. While it may not be anything super special, these tense battles feel very satisfying to work your way through. Suikoden 3 went for something a little different by giving you 3 main characters with different perspectives. Considering the focus of Suikoden has always been warring factions and politics, it's incredibly awesome to see how things play out depending on who you control at that moment. Also, the character designs here are immense. I don't think it's as great as Suikoden 2 overall, but it's still a great game and once again allows you to import save data. That means you can have stuff from Suikoden 1 and 2 in 3. It's bonkers!
But here's where it all went wrong, I think. Suikoden 4, aka the time they forgot what made their franchise special.
I want to get more into this at a later time, but a lot of people consider Suikoden 4 to be the downfall of the franchise. Many elements were dumbed down. You only have control of 4 people as opposed to 5. And most of the game is spent on a ship, which didn't sit well with a lot of fans. I didn't hate Suikoden 4, but I did finish the entire game and not remember it. So yeah. Because of that, I never really picked up 5, mostly because I was playing World of Warcraft, or the subsequent tactics game. Suikoden Tierkreis, I can't pronounce that, was received well, but I could never get into it due to the rushed voice acting.
You don't get to decide whether our battle has meaning or not.
Beyond that, there was a Suikoden PSP game that never got an official English release, leaving the Western audience Suikodenless since 2008. That's almost 10 years! With the license being held by, once again, Konami, I'm not certain if we'll ever see another Suikoden game, and that absolutely destroys me. I still need to try out 5 at some point, because I hear it's actually pretty decent, but I'd love to see a new attempt on, I don't know, the Switch or PS4. In my opinion, the potential for it to do well in a modern market is pretty high. Seriously, if you've never played Suikodens 1 through 3, they are all on PSN for PS3, and I highly recommend you check them out. I'd say buy a copy, but well, 2 isn't exactly affordable. 4 is on PSN as well, but I don't know, it's kinda weird. Bring me Suikoden 6, we are all so hungry for it.
Hey, thanks for watching, guys. I have a couple announcements to make, though. We recently made a podcast and a Patreon. It's all entirely optional, but your support will mean the world and will really go a long way. Check the link in the description and make sure to sign up if you want to join us for Game Club, which our first game is Brave Fencer Musashi. We're trying to have that done by the 20th so we can have a big roundtable discussion. It's gonna be a fun time. I haven't played that in so long. Also, if you missed it, we have a new member, Naveed, and a podcast. The first episode was us discussing reboots, and we plan to have them your way bi-weekly, so let us know what you think of that. We will be doing, iTunes at some point, but we want to get a couple episodes on the belt first, you know what I'm saying? Also, make sure to subscribe for more videos. I hope you guys are enjoying Arcadea Z, which is pretty much what this is, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.